You know, of all of the architects I know, Populous is like really good. How's that? Thank you, you're a good friend. Because you know, yeah.
Good afternoon. Standing room only, that's what you like on opening night, isn't it? We apologize for the room. Quite honestly, we weren't sure if more than 8 or 9 of you are going to show up. So I'm glad you're here. We sent out a notice earlier in the week about this session. I think if there's anything that we can be sure of moving forward as an organization, is that our facilities and our physical plants are going to become more and more important to what we need to do. What we need to do for our business model and what we need to do to satisfy our customers at baseball's highest level. So I think this session is important for a multitude of reasons. One, we have some of the brightest and the best people in our organization who are already doing. Hello. Hello. There we go. Thank you very much. Don't look at me. I didn't do anything. That are already doing this. So the case studies and the people in the room who are way ahead of us in some respects are going to be able to add valuable insight and context to what we're going to talk about today. There is an ever-increasing need to generate revenue. And you've heard me talk over the years many, many times about new money and more money. More money is going to the existing base, touching price point and generating more revenue. New money is just that. It's money that's currently not in our system, but we need to bring into our system. And we have tapped out in many respects our ability to go to the 4 core revenue centers of tickets, advertising, food and beverage, and merchandise. We're working very hard on e-commerce and in the digital space. We're working very hard at enterprises from the standpoint of a global solution to some marketing dollars. But at home is where we really make our bacon, where you really get a chance to have direct impact and influence over what happens to your revenue streams, what happens around your ballparks. And today, the idea is to do a case study sharing, best practices sharing, and hear from some really, really energized, intelligent, passionate people about helping us move the needle on what we can do with our physical plants from a standpoint of inside the ballpark, from the standpoint of the ancillary development, and from the standpoint of preparing ourselves for this next wave of facility standards and the next generation of fandom that's going to require different things than we have today. I remember when I was a young man, and yes, at one point I was a young man, Rick Horrow.
I'm not saying a word.
When I went to a ballpark, I wanted to know 3 things. I wanted to know where my seat was, I wanted to know where the concession stand was, and I wanted to know where the restroom was, because that was the only 3 places I really cared about, because I was going to sit down and watch a game. That's not the case now. I didn't want to go through all of these other things that you have to go through to get into a stadium now with retail and all that other. My wife loves it, but I'm not that crazy about it. But that's the wave of the future. And we've got people here today who are going to talk about how we can accomplish those, how we can enter into public-private, joint ventures, tripart agreements between developers, ball clubs, and communities, civic, government communities, to keep pace and to make sure that we're able to really serve our model, serve our franchise, serve our community in the best possible way. This facilities, franchise the facility and the community seminar, we'd really talked about doing it last year, and we just, a multitude of things came up, and this gentleman I'm about to introduce has been consistently passionate about doing this for us. I've known Rick Horrow too long, about 30 years. Rick is very, very good at what he does, and as soon as I figure that out, I'll tell you how good he is.
Thanks.
But Rick is someone who's helping us in this space and in other spaces, but has been involved in Oklahoma City. And Michael, I know you have a vote coming Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Yeah. Good luck. I hear we're in good shape. Double-digit lead in the polls.
Don't jinx it. Don't jinx it.
Okay. In Oklahoma City, in El Paso, and in other places at major league and minor league levels in the sports space, dealing mostly with communities. So at this time, I'm going to turn the program over to Rick And I think you're in for a really good afternoon. Hi, Miles, how are you? A really good afternoon of sharing, case study, best practices. I apologize for the room. We will do this next year on an ongoing basis, and I promise there will be more seats. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Rick Horrow.
Thank you, my friend. First of all, before he leaves, I just want to tell you it is a testament to Pat O'Connor for his perseverance, for his intensity, for his leadership. Not only I'm really excited to be involved in this process and working with him as greater days lie ahead in every context, but also it tells you how seriously people take this process where we thought we were going to get a smaller room, and of course we didn't get a smaller room. The idea is to clear these first set of seats out and use them as PSLs. I told him it's not going to work. I told him that was really be silly, but that's okay. I really am serious about structuring, working with the best minds in the business to give you some insight. All of you have done a great job in protecting your assets. This will also provide additional inventory to protect your assets. If there are people who have to come in and come out, just know that there will be this 3-hour show available and posted over the next couple of days and forever on the site. So you're not missing anything if you have to leave. But what we're going to do is structure this basically in 3 areas. The first one is the inside the stadium, for lack of a better term. Jim Rennie, who's been involved with Rossetti and otherwise, and now is the head of the facility development side of JLL, and others, Populous will show some of their case studies and others. This will be all issues relating to fan safety, entertainment, environment, access, things that people know, the things that people don't, standards, all of those issues we'll talk about. Feel free to interrupt and ask questions. This is for you. Second piece is called Stadium District Community Building through Ancillary Development. JLL is a global full-service real estate firm that really is a commercial management facility firm, and it was very important for us to introduce you to them because they provide a healthy perspective of ROI and economic development in the context of these facilities. You know, in essence, treating your facility like a magnet office building. What happens around it? How do you attract? Harry Claff has got some really interesting ideas about that. And then last, Stan Brand, who we all know from his political career, from his oratorical career, from his golf career. Stan is the man, he'll tell you, he is the best. And he will give us some perspective on how important minor league baseball is in the community and in the country, borrowing some of the themes that everybody is hearing today as we move forward, trying to explain to everybody in the country why every minor league baseball team is very important. Let's just say that. So it's a 1-panel break, panels 2 and 3 together. We'll try to keep it on time. Those of you who care about the Patriots and Chiefs at 1:30, we'll try to update you as best we can. And frankly, we'll move forward, and hopefully what you get the next 3 hours is something that you're able to share and learn from. Having said that, let me just give you kind of a general outline before we introduce one of our keynotes. About 41.5 million fans attending minor league baseball this last year. We all understand that this is the 15th year in a row minor league baseball is over that 40 million person mark. As you know, attendance has increased about 2.5%, while MLB declined about 1.6%, just a comparative fact. Importantly, minor league baseball, and we'll continue to harp at this, is available to 81% of the U.S. population, meaning they live in markets with minor league baseball teams. And 129 of the clubs are located in the top 100 U.S. designated market areas covering the country. Average price for a family of 4, $69 to attend a game, including 2 adult tickets, 2 childs, 2 hot dogs, sodas, and beers. Obviously affordable. We all understand that. You all understand that. But as far as the emphasis It's an obvious thing that everybody needs to be aware of. On the facility side, since 2000, minor league baseball opened 68 new ballparks, 4 new ballparks for 2020, and since 1990, the last agreement, 132 new ballparks at the cost of $3.2 billion. So before we get into the specific panels, let me just give you kind of 5 generalizations that'll permeate throughout this afternoon. Number 1, the $3.2 billion construction number is a classic public-private partnership. On average, 28% are private dollars, 46% city, 17% county, and about 8% state. Mixture, great participation. Number 2, these facilities universally recognized as important components of a community infrastructure, just as critical to a region's growth as libraries, convention centers, museums, transportation, infrastructure, and the like. Very significant. Number 3, minor league teams and their facilities, vital components of their communities because they provide affordable, fan-friendly entertainment for members of their communities, support scores of local businesses, thousands of dollars of charity and man-hours, and materially enhance the quality of life of each community. Harder to quantify, but very, very specifically important, and we'll have some confirmation of that in just a few minutes. Number 4, really important as well, these tangible and intangible assets are consistent regardless of market size. We're going to cover case studies today from smaller markets, Jupiter, Kannapolis, Madison, middle markets, Des Moines, Oklahoma City, Albuquerque, Wichita. I guess you call them larger markets of Vegas and Hartford. We're not talking about population breakdowns, but there is a broad diversity here. And when you hear the stat of the 81% of the U.S. population living within a market of at least one minor league baseball club, the national diversity cannot be underemphasized. Finally, the solution to improve facilities, as Pat would say, rests in 3 key areas: time, money, and space. As we approach a new PBA, sharing best practices and creatively engineering comprehensive solutions will be the key to unlocking design, finance, and compliance challenges we face in this new paradigm. Maintaining and developing facilities that meet evolving minimum standards is critically important, not only for the fan experience, but for player safety and development, and for maximizing long-term sustainable revenue. So as we go through all of this, we will talk about those 5 criteria. The panels will include, as we've said, experts from architecture, commercial real estate, public support, political expertise, and we'll get into those in a few minutes. But our keynote, informally, good friend, great opportunity, came all the way from Indianapolis to share this time, 2-term mayor of Indianapolis, Greg Ballard. He won in 2007, as described in every single political judgment and assessment, as the biggest upset in Indiana history, smothering the Democratic mayor, Bart Peterson, by a whopping 51.1% of the vote, in an amazing landslide. Then he wins re-election with another incredible landslide. I've been saying around the country as a friend, 70, 80%. I'm disappointed to realize that the margin was about 50.4%, but as people tell me, a win is a win. And he was an 8-year mayor of Indianapolis. In that time, which is important for all of us, Super Bowl, Final Fours, NCAA headquarters, the creation of the Indianapolis Sports Council, pioneering the concept of using sports as an economic development, rivaled mainly, maybe only by what happens in Oklahoma City and other cities. But Greg's other thing we'll talk about in a minute, he is the founder of the Sports Business Advisory Council, close to it, of the National Conference of Mayors, and oversaw the creation of a full-service organization within the U.S. Conference of Mayors that did nothing but focus on providing support for the sports infrastructure for communities all over the country. So let's spend a few minutes getting to know Greg and what he stands for. Without further ado, Greg Ballard. Grab it and run. You good?
I'm good,
Hello?
Rick. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Both our mics are working?
We're good?
Okay, good. So, you know, I wanted you to meet these people because this is kind of a unique time. You haven't been out of office that long, but your 8 years can give you the perspective of what all of this means to a city, but also what it means from your, lofty position of being involved with the U.S. Conference of Mayors as well. Talk a little bit about why you created this sports group amongst a whole bunch of mayors that meets semi-annually.
Yeah, I thought it was important because professional sports in the communities are extremely important. They take a lot of resources. They bring communities together. And as a group of mayors that meets twice a year, we weren't really talking about this, even though it was a major part of our cities and continues to be so. And I thought we needed to bring in the mayors who had a tremendous interest in this, but also it brought in all the leagues. And we talked to the commissioners and senior executives from almost all the leagues that came in and briefed us all the time and kind of wanted our support on certain issues. And I think that really helped other cities learn from each other, which is mainly what the U.S. Conference of Mayors does. We learn from each other, but we weren't really learning about sports together, but now we are.
And part of the issue as well is to do the economic impact studies, which I know you did, but also to try to define and quantify the unquantifiable in many ways. You've said in a few of your writings that it's important to realize that franchises and facilities bring communities together. It's a rallying point. It brings a city together as well. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it really does. And in Indianapolis, we have a AAA team, and they've been in Indianapolis for well over 100 years. And they're just a part of the community, and I don't think that will ever change in anybody's lifetime in here, certainly. Because almost every organization in the city has a night at the Indians game during the summer. I mean, it's just amazing how many people do that. And then everybody who comes to the games are together. Anybody who's been to any sporting event in any city, no matter what size, everybody cheers for that team. Whether you're for the impeachment or against the impeachment, or whether you're for this subject or that subject, it doesn't matter. Everybody cheers for the home team in a way and brings everybody together. And I think that's what it does in so many different ways. And like I say, all the organizations are part of this. And I just think it's very important to understand the quality of life of this, where families need this, particularly minor league baseball. Families are extremely critical to the quality of life of a city, and minor league baseball plays a big part of that across the country.
Well, it's hand in hand, because one of the things that Indianapolis has been known for since Eli Lilly took the mission up in the first place was the amateur sports capital of the United States, the Pan Am Games, the Lucas Oil Stadium after the RCA Dome, all of the events that are now part and parcel of what a community is about. So talk about that.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine Indianapolis without sports as the venue. About 45 to 50 years ago, a group of people got together and said, we need to promote the city, we need to build up the city in some way, because if you saw Indianapolis 50 years ago, it's called the Circle City, I hope you do, and we have Circle in the middle of downtown Indianapolis. There is no one on the weekend there at all. Now it's packed, no matter what day of the week it is. And because people decided on the path of using sports to bring forth the city. And the National Sports Festival in '82 was the first effort at that. It was the Pan Am Games in '87, which is the time when the city really found out that they could do this sort of thing. The Pacers came along. We've got the NCAA in. We had a concerted effort to bring in the national governing bodies. This was a concerted effort. This was not happenstance. This just did not happen. We used sports as the venue to build up the city over the last 50 years. And if you look at the city now compared to where it was 50 years ago, it is remarkable what has happened. But the sports has been a huge part of it. And I hope when people go to these communities, they understand that sports can play a part in the economic development and the quality of life of the community.
And its momentum. So describe the process. Next year you have the 2021 NBA All-Star Game, and then the College Football National Championship. You have Final Fours guaranteed in because the NCAA moved there and the quid pro quo was the, I'm sorry, no, I shouldn't have used that word, right? You shouldn't be using, it was just 3 words. You're not going to hear it anymore, right? So the trade-off was the national championships, the Final Fours. The women's Final Four, too. So, but the point is that one begets the other and it's easier the next time around, right?
No question. As I like to tell people, we're kind of the turnkey city now because we had the first sports corporation, started in 1979, just coincidentally the same year that ESPN was started. And I think those kind of grew up together in some way. And so we kept holding these events, kept bringing the national governing bodies. And it's amazing what did happen because all these teams, including our minor league team, sponsor so many things in the city. They volunteer in the city. They do all these different things. And it also spawned, frankly, off into the arts because we have we have 3 main dance troupes in the city of Indianapolis. One of them is sponsored by the Indianapolis Colts. We have the second or third most important violin competition in the world. We have the most important animal conservation prize in the world. All of this is funded primarily, brought up through sports as a venue to bring the city to a certain level because we knew that was something that people would pay attention to. It would bring people together. It would enhance the quality of life of the community and all of those things that we talk about.
So it's an easy perspective for you. Sometimes it's harder. Most of you are not the elected officials of political groups, but you own or control one of the big assets in town. And advice on how you explain to city and political leaders what the situation would be like if you didn't have this infrastructure. How much harder would it be to go do something similar to get economic impact?
Yeah, it was the economic development potential that comes along with it. As long as you do the right things and are a part of the community, and I'm a big fan of P3s, the public-private partnerships. When people work together in this regard, it's amazing what can happen. And then everybody has skin in the game. And one of the things that you learn very quickly as the mayor is that everybody, for investment purposes, looks to the mayor's office or to the government officials to say, are they in it? Is there skin in the game from them? And I think that's an important point to remember, that if you get your government officials in it, the development community is going to look at this thing more seriously. And so when you build that stadium, when you have this team and you want to do certain things, then people who want to invest are going to look to the government. I got asked all the time, is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? People are asking me to invest here. Is this really going to happen? Are you going to be behind this? I got that all the time. And I told them honestly what was going to happen, and because it's important. You don't want to mislead folks who want to invest in your community. But if the government is in the game, the development officials will come along, nonprofits will come along, other people will want to be a part of this, and it enhances the quality of life of everybody.
Let's flip it for a second and talk about what the conditions are for the government to stay in the game. If you were mayor and you had a owner or a stadium person come to you and say, I want you to build something or improve my facility, but I only have the legal or business means to offer you a 1-year or even a 5-year guarantee, what would you do?
Well, the first thing I would do is I'd say no, because no one's going to put up city infrastructure or city money for that sort of return. You want a long-term commitment. You want these entities to be involved with you for the long haul, because I was joking earlier, if you invest in that sort of thing, you won't get reelected. Certainly that's not going to happen, because you're putting up taxpayer dollars. And I was always very cognizant, and every mayor I know of was extremely cognizant that this is taxpayers' money. It's not his or her money, and you have to be cognizant of that fact. And if you're going to use that money wisely, if you're going to invest that money into something, it needs to be something long-term that everybody will get behind. And people get behind sports teams. I've seen it all over the country. It wasn't just Indianapolis. I spent 23 years in the Marine Corps. It was all over the place and all over the world. But I remember taking my kids to the Prince William Cannons I remember that. It's a single A league. I took my kids to that, right? Yeah. And it was fun. It was important. We had a ball.
Well, and the other, let's just a little subtle before we go to the final question. The idea of 1-year commitment versus 5, and underwriters won't let you even do it and even talk about it. But if you're an enlightened politician, you're going to plan on building things for the future. And it's hard, I assume, to look at a development magnet like a facility and develop all of these long-term contiguous plans knowing that you've only got a short-term commitment from that asset.
Oh, no question. And you want to make sure that everybody's in the game. Like I said, I do want to talk about Congress.
We will.
Is that okay? We get
No,
there?
what did I just say? I have one more question, okay? Just answer this
Just
one.
to make sure. Okay.
All right.
But it's. I never made any decision based on the next election, what was going to happen in 5 years. What's going to happen in the next 30, 40, 50 years is how we generally looked at everything that we did. And I think most mayors who are worth anything would do the same thing. They know that they're kind of a caretaker in the interim period, if you will. Somebody's going to follow you. Somebody's going to move the ball differently, maybe more quickly in some areas and more slowly in other areas. But if you're going to invest in an infrastructure, if you're going to put taxpayer and put something down, if you want to create a certain vitality in a different part of the city or rehab an old part of the city, you want a return on this. You want not just the dollar return, but you want a quality of life return on all of this, because it's happened all the time. If you do it the right way, if you put it in the right place, and you have the right amenities, and you don't do it cheaply, you do it with value. It wasn't always about the dollar amount; it was the value for the dollars. How we looked at this thing, and then it's amazing what grows up around it. It's just amazing what happens, and because people say, "This is a place I want to take my family. This is a place I want to be around. This is a safe place to go." Look at everybody cheering here together. That was really critical.
Well, the final question, because it's really an important concept and it's one that you've kind of taken authorship of, and it fits into the numbers that we've used on the air and otherwise. This 81% living within a market area of minor league baseball is a very significant number, because it tells you with the national reach of the 160 teams, but the national reach of minor league baseball for so long. So talk about why it's really important to cover the country, let's say.
I think it's extremely important because of all these minor league teams that are out there. And like I said, I went to quite a few of them as we moved around the country. But I spent 23 years in the Marines, active duty. And one of my subspecialties was acquisition, where we worked with industry. And one of the things you learn pretty quickly with the Department of Defense when you're in the acquisition business is that any time that they're building a new class of ships or they're building a new airplane, Department of Defense ensures that there are subcontractors in virtually every state. There's a reason for that. They want those votes in Congress to approve that ship, that class of ships, or that airplane. And I think that's what we're kind of looking at here, is that the breadth and the depth of minor league baseball cuts across the entire country. And if you want the fan base to be there, if you want Congress to be there all the time, we have to understand that this impacts communities. And it's not just the mayors paying attention to this. U.S. representatives are paying this. U.S. senators are paying attention to this, because it's extremely important to their communities. And so any attempt to go in the opposite direction, I would suggest Congress is going to want to play a piece in this. They're going to want to say something about this. And because lots of things can emanate from Congress, and even though I was a government executive, I know how government legislative bodies work, and it's not always pretty. It's not always pretty, and it's not always nice. And minor league baseball has been such a part of America for so long that I think we always want to continue the breadth and depth of the passion for this game. I grew up believing this was America's pastime. I still think there's nothing like going to a ball game and spending a couple hours with your family at a baseball game. I still think to me, that is America. And in certain communities, in smaller communities, this is the only professional sporting game in town. And if it's not the only one, it's certainly the primary one. And that's a piece I don't think we should ever forget, because there are people other than that mayor or that councilor in town looking at it. There are people in Washington, D.C. who are looking at this also, and I hope we keep that in mind.
So you had said that you're not going to run again, but after that response, you want to reconsider?
You always got to go out on a high note.
Yeah. In all seriousness, Greg is, as you can tell, a good friend, an incredible perspective. He's he has been an ally of minor league baseball. Stan and Pat and everybody, we're going to use him, we're going to abuse him, we're going to get advice on moving forward, and everybody ought to get to know my good friend Stan Brand. He's also going to hang around for panel 3 and be part of that presentation as well. So thanks. Thank you very much. Appreciate that again. Thank you. Before we go on, anybody know the Colts score? Did they win? Did they win today? Bye. Get out of here. And the Texans got blown out by the Broncos, so it's all right. You can build a facility, but you can't get a team to win in it, right? That's story number 1. So I thought it would be very important to kick it off with that perspective. We'll hear Greg at the back end again in Stan's panel. So panel number 1, for lack of a better term, we're calling it the stadium itself. Best practices, minimum standards. It's really about player safety. It's about maximizing revenue. It's about fan experience and the like. And as I call you up, the chairman of, or the head of this panel is Jim Rennie. Jim is the senior vice president, national sports director at JLL. 35 years of experience in creating innovative sports and development destinations. He was recognized in 2016 as one of SBJ's top 50 power players in sports design and development. Worked with Rossetti, is involved domestically and in East Asia, and he was involved in the Daytona Rising project as well, so has a lot of perspective on that. He will be joined on the panel by David Bauer. David Bauer has been a pioneer at Populous for a long time. He's senior project manager and market leader. That's capital M, capital L. That's a huge title. Responsible for client relations, project management. He's led the client teams at Populous, more than 90 of the ballparks. 75% of all minor league ballparks are Populous related or Populous driven. JetBlue Park, Arizona Spring Training, Texas Rangers, Surprise, Sloan Park, El Paso Chihuahuas, as we know, a lot. And so Dave Bauer will join the panel as well. Sam Burnaby. Sam is, as you know, the the general manager and president of the Iowa Cubs. He's been involved with minor league baseball, the trustee level. Didn't know this, but he was the minor league executive of the year in 2014, and he's been an award winner, and clearly will give us a case study perspective on the Iowa Cubs and what they mean to Des Moines. So that's Sam Burnaby will step up, please be part of the panel. Ken Young has been the president of the International League, Norfolk Tides, the Eastern League Bowie Bay Sox, Carolina League Frederick Keys. In 2001, he bought the Calgary Cannons, moved them to Albuquerque, became the Isotopes of the PCL. His group purchased the Bay Sox and Keys in '06. He is the executive chairman of Spectra Food Service, serving delicious food all over the country in 100 venues in the U.S. and Canada. How's that? In U.S. and Canada. He's been a icon in this space. So Ken Young. Don Logan. It's going to be a crowded panel, but it'll be a great panel. The account executive in 1984. He started with Vegas. He became general manager in '91 and president in 2000. The PCL executive of the year in '92, '98, and 2018. Got a great ballpark. Don Logan will give us a case study perspective on what he's done. And last but certainly not least, Tom Tingle, who has been in the architectural space for many years. He was involved in the Kansas City architectural tree as everybody else was, but he has 30 years of experience in sport facility and design, and he's now with the DLR Group. So, Tom, we hopefully have enough chairs, but I turn it over to Jim Rennie to manage this band and give us some really unique perspective. Guys?
Once you guys get on stage. All right, thank you very much. We're going to walk you through a few things. This was obviously the agenda. We're going to talk about the ballpark. You've got the intros to these distinguished gentlemen here. What we want to try to answer are these questions here. What do fans want? How much are they willing to pay? How do we maintain this investment that you and the community is making in the infrastructure? And then how do we connect the ballpark to the community? This quote is something that kind of drives what everybody sort of thinks about these days, which has to do with the attention of all of us since the smartphone. Things have changed. All of the sports industry, in fact, is grappling with the reality that attendance has been dropping, despite what we heard about minor league baseball, and there's competition for that free time, right? So at the end of the day, we're looking at fan behavior, and how do we start to address the behavior of fans today, what their preferences are today within the venues that we all design and develop. Today, we are seeing people that are much more interested in the social and authentic experience. I think we all see that there's a lot of diversity in experience that people are looking for. Not just one thing satisfies people, not just three things, but there's a lot of people with different preferences. And the sports industry has been responding over the years, most recently. And as you can see in the slide, basically, is representation of different kinds of seatings. I think when we heard a little bit earlier, it used to be a seat you go to the bathroom, or you get some food. Today, that's really just not good enough for people that attend entertainment events. They want different kinds of experiences. They want to be able to sit in different kinds of areas. They want to be served a little bit differently. In fact, people don't even want to sit in their seats anymore. We probably see that all in your venues, right? People now want to be mobile, congregate in certain areas. There's that social experience they're looking for. They don't want to stay still. They want different views. Today, I want to talk a little bit about how the ballparks today, and suggestions, recommendations this panel will have, how do they address that? How do we start thinking about our ballparks in a way that really appeal to our fans? And we're going to talk about the facility. The owners of the teams, I hope, will contribute a little bit in terms of the operations as well. Talk a little bit about how do they engage their fans, and how do their ballparks do that? So, Ken, if you don't mind, I'd like you to speak a little bit about your ballpark at New Mexico, Albuquerque, and what it is that you thought about back when you redeveloped this stadium.
Well, I think the most important thing is that when we built Albuquerque, it was about 10 years after we had built the ballpark in Norfolk. So we looked at maybe a few things that had changed over that decade from 93 to 2003. And we decided we needed to do a lot more for the fan. And so we did put in a great play area, because the one thing, and I think everybody in this room recognizes, that we can't survive on the baseball fan. The baseball fan will come and only does need maybe food service and restrooms. But the fact is, we need the other 85% of the fans to have a good time and constantly be coming back. So we employed in the stadium a lot of different areas, gathering areas in Albuquerque. And I mentioned the kids area, but different types of group areas. So some were smaller, some were a large picnic area for almost 500 people. And those areas are still important today, but the one thing that I look at is that we now need more areas. We just recently, in the last year, took 3 suites, made them into 1 suite where we could get 75 people or so to congregate inside. It was hugely popular. The more of those places we can look at for social gathering, that's what we need to do. And so in the case of Albuquerque, now we're trying to implement some of those changes, let's say. In Norfolk, it's the same thing, and we'll get to that in another segment. But it's so important to look at from kids, toddlers, let's say, all the way on up to areas that we can certainly create more gathering areas and social areas.
Okay. Speak to food and beverage. That's one of your specialties for sure. So, talk a little bit about what's changing in that business, what's changing the way fans, what they want, how they enjoy food and beverage today.
Yeah, matter of fact, I have my hot dog socks on because over the last 45 years, hot dogs have been very, very good to me. So, but when I first got into the business, that's pretty much what we sold were hot dogs. Today, I'm sure in many of your venues, you probably have at least 50 different food items. So what's changed? The fact is, some of them may be sushi. In a lot of cases, I'm looking at Alan El Paso is one of them, where you have all of these local vendors that people are familiar with, like their food, and so that's been a big change, and I think will continue to change in our industry to add more of those. Geez, we now have celebrity chefs in many of our ballparks because people expect something that's upscale. And a lot of these are for perception. We don't necessarily make a lot of money on a few of those things, but the fact is, it gives a perception that we're up here instead of here in the services in our ballpark. And lastly, and this has been going on almost, well, at least in the last 30 years, that we just keep increasing sizes. And that goes for not just baseball, but all over the country in food service. We increase sizes, and that increases per caps. So that 24-ounce, 25-ounce beer, that bomber is one of the most important things we have in our ballpark, and it does provide tremendous revenue to us. In many minor league ballparks, you know that your food service gross revenue can be 120% compared to your ticket revenue and so forth. It's just the more of those larger sizes we can incorporate, that's what the fans want. And so we want to try to do what the fans want and provide more of that to them.
Great tip. So Don, talk a little bit about your new stadium. A lot of new features we'll touch on, but in particular the bar and the open areas, places that you can congregate.
Well, what we wanted to have is destinations within the ballpark. That's how I characterized it when talking to people. And, we're on a 6.8 acre piece of property, so it's pretty tight in there. But by doing the bar in the outfield next to the pool, the kids area, it was intended to be a kids area in right field. It became kind of a millennial hangout. People aren't going to sit, like Kenny touched on this, they're not going to sit and watch a game for 3 hours anymore. So we have different areas in the park. The kids area is small. One of the great things we got to go and look at everything that everybody has built. Alan and Brad were I don't know what I can do. I still owe you something because I called Alan all the damn time, picking his brain. And we came up with some, the ideas were to just, it would be food items. We have a great barbecue area in the outfield. We've got, I think we had Italian, we had everything. I mean, we had 11 different vendors come in from around town to do different things, simple as sandwiches, tacos, garlic fries, whatever it would be. And in doing that, there's gathering spots within the place. So people want to go, you want a craft beer, you got to go behind the plate. You want the Mexican beer is the hangar bar in the outfield. You want good old-fashioned Budweiser, Coors, and Miller, they're everywhere.
It's almost like something for everybody.
Yeah,
right?
that's what we truly tried to do. And then our premium area is second to none. It's unbelievable.
Dave, you want to speak a little bit about some of the different seating options? You might see this slide here. How things have changed in that sense too, how people congregate.
Absolutely, and I think, listening to the pros in what they do with their own clubs, really, I mean, that's moved a lot of the trend of what we're talking about. One of the things that has, in fact, affected where we're at, the trend of seating itself. I mean, a lot of times when we sit down with our clients and we talk, the first thing we hear is how many seats they want. And we try to say, that's fine, but what's your capacity want to be? Because really what we're seeing, and Alan, you experienced that in El Paso too, but we immediately looked at what the standards call out for AAA ballparks, and it says seating, and it says 10,000 seats. But we've also seen that trend change. So it started to be, it's become almost capacity rather than seating. So if we have different types of seating and we provide the fans what they're wanting, and we're listening to what the fans are saying to us in all the surveys, it's different types of seating. Families want picnic tables. Family want berms. Family wants different areas. It's what the families are asking for that we've got to respond to. And that's generated, a savings in the initial capacity, initial seating, which is initial capital cost, which saves everybody on the long end as well. So you're still selling the same beverage, whether you're sitting or you're standing. Find places to put, drink rails in inexpensively. Any place you can put a beer and a hot dog down, you can sell it. So all that is adding, it's helping with the revenue. And again, these guys are experts. On either side of me are experts at doing this. They've experienced it. But it's responding to what the fans want, what the families want, because the families are the next generation of your season ticket holders. And we all know that. You guys know it better than anybody. So responding to what the families want, responding to the, creating villages of seating, instead of just, one consistent bowl. It's taking out, making the vomitories wider so you can get more people back through food and beverage. You'll create some open spaces. But you also take those seats and you put them in gathering areas. So you're standing, you're congregating. Nashville, right field corner is a prime example of that. We're seeing a lot of those types of areas happen for just putting people in those. And it doesn't even talk about Thirsty Thursdays, where you don't even have to have a seat, you don't have to have a view to the game. If you're in the ballpark, you pay general admission. Your per caps are pretty darn good for food and beverage, especially beverage.
So also, besides seating areas, we're talking also about amenities that are adjacent to the ballpark too. So I think most ballparks have a kids zone, right? Talk a little bit more about some of the variety of amenities that people may not even watch the game, quite frankly, but the fact that they're there's a happening going on. What kind of spaces do you find to be really successful?
Well, again, it's everything from, again, Nashville, talk about right field corner in Nashville. It's the things where you can come down from the main street in Nashville, you walk down the hill, you're in the ballpark, and again, the game may be going on while you're playing other games out there in the right field. It may be, things that are out of the ordinary. Take an example area that may have a certain rock formation nearby or something. So you create a garden, and you call it a garden, you create a rock pavilion of some type, but make something different for your fans to want to come to. Those kind of things make every park individual from the other. Unique, almost the Kodak moments, if you will. You want to meet me at, at so-and-so area. Meet me at that area. Yeah, it is. Well, it is. And by the way, there may be a game going on at the same time. So,
Don, in your spaces, you've dedicated these outdoor spaces you referenced already. From an investment standpoint, creating space like that, do you think there's a return to that?
And it is, I think, but part of it was, Ken touched on it before, it's like the celebrity chefs having a pool in Vegas. You got to have a pool. It's 110 degrees half the season. So it's, we're charging more for it this year. It's sold out for every game for the whole season. And it's a good example of, we really don't make as much by the time you pay to keep the thing clean. You got to have 2 lifeguards. You got it's labor intensive to have it, but it's an iconic part of what we have, and so it's something that differentiates our park from most others. So, and that's, I think, all the different amenities have that function. They function in that respect to a certain extent.
We've talked a lot about fan, and by the way, Sam, I was thinking about in your case too. You've done a lot of things in terms of multi-purpose. I'm going to talk a little bit about how do we do more with your stadiums besides the game. And it's really about, I think on the one hand, you're connecting with the community, but the reality is there is ancillary revenue there as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. It's certainly no secret to anybody in this room that the use of your ballpark and the incremental revenue has become a big part of our bottom line, whether it's a wedding at home plate or a 5K run originating out of your parking lot. We currently, even in Des Moines right now, are hosting a Christmas Kindle Mart kind of thing in our parking lot that just exceeded 140,000 people for the weekend. So, those are the types of things that you really have to get creative with. And we're in a little different situation in that, these guys are living the dream relative to a new ballpark, and particularly my colleague at the end of the row here, we went from drinking J. Lord to Silver Oak in his office because of Camus last night on him. But, our challenge for us making that incremental dollar even more important is that we're a facility that's coming up on 30 years old. We were part of the HOK early family. Earl Santee built ballparks. Our reference was John O'Donnell in Davenport, the Quad Cities, as to how we were going to do our thing. And so we've had to adapt with old bones. And Tom, you worked on our stadium. You know where those bones are, and it's made it difficult to get creative with some of the luxury services, and so we've had to watch what happens in other ballparks, and we've stolen a lot of ideas. I'm the biggest thief in this room when it comes to everybody else's ideas, because everybody's smarter than what we do. So we just try to enhance it as best we can. But again, back to the incremental revenue, it's so important to get creative with as much as you can with that, yet still keep the integrity of what we call a baseball stadium, because it's for baseball. A lot of times we run into the idea that, well, this concert's going to be great to do, and we're going to make $50,000 on it, but the balancing cost of what it's going to take to get my field back into shape, you begin to lose sight of that at times, and all of a sudden you've put yourself behind the 8 ball with your affiliate.
Right. So Tom, working with Sam on some of the existing ballparks, which a lot of folks here have ballparks that are aged, what are some of the challenges and what are some of the opportunities you see in doing that?
Well, sometimes you wish that the people who had designed it originally would have afforded more flexibility. I think that's where I see a lot of the designs going to at this time is that, which goes to the point about maybe fewer fixed seats and more areas for hospitality and those kinds of things, because then what it does is that it takes you out of terrace seating and concrete, and it puts you into areas of flat areas where you can now say, this year I might want to do a picnic area, next year I may want to do a hospitality area with an awning over it. So having that as the opportunity to kind of buck the trend and be able to follow what's going on in today's world, especially with the people wanting to stand up and maybe not even watch the game at all, but just make sure they're there in the environment. So I think those are the things that you wish that you had, and that we've run across some really interesting opportunities, but also some very nightmares in some of these older facilities.
But the point is, it can be done.
It can be done.
You have to be creative between your owner and the designer. David, you wanted to say something, right?
Well, I want to add on what Sam said. The other side of that, too, is I know of clubs. I'm looking at Mike Nutter in the back there, where he's got, in Fort Wayne, they've got, I think, close to 300 event days a year in their ballpark. And it's people coming to the ballpark. It's communities owning the ballpark and taking ownership of that. And, again, I know everybody's got this. Chris Calcaterra in the back, spring training-wise, Peoria is doing the exact same thing. So it's bringing communities, it's people owning the ballpark, again, goes a long ways to help fund these things and help get the initiative going, and calling the congressman when it's time to make that happen also. So it's that also.
Okay. Another sort of interesting thing, at your ballpark, you've got a USL team now that's a tenant. Can you talk a little bit about, it seems like a great advantage, but I'm sure there's some challenges with that too. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. We do have a USL team that was new just this year and ended up being much, much more popular than any of us suspected, averaging close to 10,000 a game. And so our biggest nightmare could have been the fact that, okay, they have basically maybe 5 days in between a baseball game and getting ready for the next baseball game. So they come in the middle. It takes a day and a half to get the field ready for soccer, and then right when it's over, you got to start getting it back to baseball, and that also takes a couple of days. So our biggest thing was trying to make sure, because we've seen in so many other ballparks where the field just wasn't nearly as playable and up to minor league and major league guidelines as it should be, that we wanted to make sure we kept still the same level that we had previously, which was a very high level for our field. That is certainly one of the major challenges, and we were able to do that. But I will tell you, especially because of the success of the soccer team, it did provide a lot more revenue to us, and it also brought in a clientele that wasn't used to coming to our ballpark. And to me, that's one of the biggest advantages of having other events in your ballpark. They see, boy, it's a neat place to come. I'll come back for baseball. So that's one of the areas that just so important in a way to market your park.
Great. So I know we're whizzing through this. Any other ideas, by the way, on ancillary use? Some things that we haven't talked about?
Well, I have one that's kind of far out, and we haven't been able to implement it yet. And that is, with the younger people, gaming, esports, and so forth is just so popular. And I thought, there might be a way to take a section of the ballpark and have maybe 15 or 20 areas where you could actually have an esports tournament every night. And some of those could be when a ball game's going on. Some could be when the place would ordinarily be dark. And I thought, there's got to be a way to do that. I'm not sure exactly what it is. Probably have to talk to somebody up here. And try to determine, okay, how can we make that a place that maybe can be used 365 days or close to it? Plus, I think it would attract more people to baseball. And we're talking about whether it's the millennials or maybe younger than the millennials, getting people used to coming to the ballpark, even though it might be for another reason. So that's kind of a far out one, but I think we might see it in the future.
Happy to talk to you about that if this one.
Jim, the other, one of the things we hit a lick on this summer for the first time, I know some parks have done it, we got the idea from, I think, the Giants, as a matter of fact, but related to millennials, we created a disc golf course in the stadium and around the outside of the stadium, and frankly, I didn't have any faith in it at all. And it was about 3,000 people that had never ever been in our ballpark, and for the most part, anybody that we asked, they said, no, this is the first time down. So, just again, something that's out of the ordinary, but a good use of the stadium that, got me Saturday's worth of beer sales and a little bit of rent money out of the deal.
I think the point you guys are bringing up is that, yes, there's ancillary revenue there, but you get new audience, new fans that come to your ballpark to get exposed to it, that has an opportunity to grow your fan base, and that's some great lessons there. I want to transition a little bit talking about soccer only because JLL, we have a group that's in facility management, and they manage several sports facilities. And I want to get into conversation a little bit about operating your venue and maintaining your venue. And Bob Chansey up there, or down there, I guess, Alex right next to him, who's with our group. I wanted to find out from you guys, what are the unique challenges in your venues in terms of operating in minor league ballparks? And then how do you, what are the challenges from the standpoint of maintaining it over time? So those of you and Sam who've had, ballpark for many years, these are challenges I can imagine. And how do you handle CapEx, maintenance, and so on?
Well, again, going back to the fact that we're almost 30 years old, the old bones are a little tougher to keep track of and keep the maintenance on. Certainly, the business model that I instill in my staff that they hear every day from me is safe, clean, and fun. And everything we do is geared towards safe, clean, and fun. If it's not the safest place you can come to or the cleanest place you can come to, you don't have to worry about fun because they're not coming anyway at that point. So, mom doesn't want to have a messy bathroom, and dad doesn't want to sit in the seat with sticky soda or nacho cheese or whatever it may be. You have to, we just live that maintenance side of it as cleanliness, 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 as many of you do. And then from the bigger aspect of it, the HVAC and the roof and the lights and all the major capitals, that's the cooperation of a great partnership with our city that we have, the fortunate mayor of a great partner in Mayor County in Des Moines, who just was recently elected by 250 votes in a landslide there. But if we don't have that partnership, then it's awfully tough for us to go and say, listen, we need to replace this chilling unit for $300,000, and how are we going to work this out? And they work it out with open arms. Thank God. I'm not sure how wide open the arms are going to be moving forward here in the next 18 months relative to the climate that we're working out of right now in the PBA. But it's been really good up to now, and that's really what we've relied on and where the money has come from on a major capitals from our standpoint.
So it's a commitment that your community has to the ballpark and keeping it going.
I think partnership really is a better term. Just for us, it's, the partnership of the city of Des Moines, the partnership of the corporate community, the partnership of the Chicago Cubs, and the partnership of the fans, and it really works well.
Ken, do you have anything to add to that from your ballpark?
I really think Sam just did a great job of stating it, and I'm just going to emphasize a couple things. Security and cleanliness, those are all things we can do something about, and they are so important for the reasons that Sam mentioned. And there's not a huge cost. There might be an extra cost for some of that. I look at the cleanliness side, and really we try to pressure wash after every game where we can. And I look at it as a marketing cost, really. It's not just happens to be another operating expense. It's a marketing cost because you know that the families, that's what they want. And then also, yeah, the partnership, and it goes with everybody, but you can get things done. And now, obviously with the PBA, we need to get term so that cities will provide things for us, but part of it also is having funds, and this is a contractual issue, but funds in which maybe instead of some rent, it goes into a fund for future investment in capital. It could be repair and maintenance, all of those things. If we start out in our contracts with something there, it does make it easier. But the excellent relationship you have with city, county, whoever your owner of your ballpark is, that goes a long way towards keeping it maintained correctly.
Don, you came from Cashman Field.
Yes, I do.
Now you have a new ballpark. Can you tell me a little bit about what you were dealing with at Cashman Field from this perspective, and what you're anticipating, your first season at in your new ballpark?
We went from $9 a head per cap to $20 a head per cap. For everybody in this room, I mean, that was that big of the gap was unbelievable. But, one of the things, I think, from my perspective, it was much harder operating at Cashman, not for any other reason that it was just difficult to get people to want to come to a rundown part of town, to a 35-year-old ballpark. But what we always were able to do, we kept the place clean. I mean, I think that every one of us that's been doing this a long time, that security and cleanliness are 1 and 1A in whether it's a brand new ballpark or an older park. And that's obviously something we've taken with us to the new ballpark. I think now you've got technology. One of the things we spent a ridiculous amount of time and money on in the new park was the DAS system. I didn't even know what DAS was back then. It's either digital or distributive. I've heard both ways, the DAS, and then we have bad Wi-Fi situation out in that part of the valley for a lot of reasons. And, we spent an inordinate amount of time, money, and really thinking it through. And then the technology in the whole year and a half we're building the place, it's changing. It's amazing. But, that's something as you go forward for all of us that we've got to be mindful of. And, there's just being on top of things, being out in front of it, understanding you don't know what's going on fully until you experience it, and make good, sound decisions going forward. And, we are the best and fun, family-oriented entertainment in America, and that's why all the people in this room have created that, and it's something that you just got to continue to push.
Right. So still staying on this theme, from your perspective, was there any lessons learned that were a little bit of
Not really. I think pigeons. We got way more pigeons out there now than we had before. They're a pain. But no.
Bob, do you want to add anything to that from your perspective in terms of what we're doing?
Sure. I'll just say a couple things. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Bob Vishansi with JLL. The only thing I think I would add is that as a real estate company, we kind of look at these facilities as real estate assets, which is what they are, right? And so we always think as we provide operational service to our clients in terms of kind of four key areas, right? So you've got labor, you've got equipment purchasing and maintenance, you have energy consumption, and then you have supplies. And so my only message, I think, Jim, would be that whether you're responsible for these costs or whether your landlord, as the municipality is responsible for the costs, that there's real value in kind of managing those costs in an intentional way, as opposed to kind of reactionary and what we call breakdown maintenance, right? And so I think it's certainly not the kind of the most glamorous part of what you all do. Your intention is to create these vibrant, community hubs to create a quality entertainment experience for all the citizens of your community. But it's important to remember the operational piece, because it's critical not only to control costs, but by controlling costs, you're really controlling the value of the asset and the value of your franchise. So that's the only thing I think I would add.
Great. Thanks, Bob. So there's opportunity to save on the other side of the ledger in terms of making sure that you're controlling and managing those assets. So I want to turn our attention now to the player experience. And Sam, you've gone through a number of renovations, including the clubhouse. And I want to kind of address, Sam and Don and Ken with respect to the player side, in the clubhouse quality and so on.
Well, I mentioned earlier the importance of partnership, and I included the Chicago Cubs in that. We've been with the Cubs in Des Moines since 1981, so we've enjoyed a long relationship. Fortunately, I guess of my 37 years, it's all been with the Cubs. And I guess you just learn to understand what the right thing to do is. I'm not sure how that learned experience comes without getting in and getting your hands dirty. But aside from your lease, it's the most important piece of paper that you get, is that relationship with your affiliate. And it's important to note that the cleanliness part of things is just as important as the fixtures and the physical assets and the size of the areas that you have for them to operate in. And these are all important things to make sure that your affiliate is getting done what they need to get done. It's our job to provide a facility that allows them to train their players, and it's their job to provide us the players, and that's how the agreement works. And I think at times we lose sight of what needs to be done in those facilities by virtue of making the bottom line better, which is clearly a mistake. You have to look at all you can in order to do what you can as best you can, and that's how you keep a good partnership and hopefully good long-term upcoming partnerships.
Yeah, Ken, you've got the newest ballpark, at least up here. In your approach, can you give us some thoughts about that as well?
Well, first of all, we do, I think all of our teams try to sit down often with our major league affiliate and just get feedback from them. We try to, we had in a few different places, older ballparks, where they wanted some improvements in various ways. And we were able to provide those. In some cases, we need to go back to them and say, hey, we may need to share the expense on this. But at least having that relationship and really often talking to, whether it's a farm director, sometimes a GM, but more often the farm director, and he'll give us that feedback of really what they're looking for. So that's very important. The other part that is a minor expense, Sam certainly touched on it, and that is just simple stuff. Cleaning can include making sure your rugs are clean and that the shower areas are clean and all of those things that don't have huge expense, but they do have expense, and we need to be prepared to spend that money so stuff's in as good a condition as possible. And that's one of the reasons, by the way, that we're going through this PBA negotiation right now, and we will have to provide those things and probably some other space and so forth. But it's a key to keeping our partner in the major leagues happy.
Well, I mean, our place obviously is brand new. You know, we divided in the run-up to it, the fan amenities and then the player development amenities were the two things we really focused on. And, you know, downstairs, it's as nice as any in baseball anywhere. And, you know, part of that was we wanted to do it right. We had a chance to do it right. We've got a player lounge on the home side that every guy on the team, there's room for them to sit. There's 4 TVs in there. They play video games. They don't even watch baseball anymore. But, you know, we've got it really flows well. The training room is about half as big as this room. You know, we didn't spare any expense on that side. The indoor batting tunnels are great. The setup there, we've got video equipment that now you just do it on their phone. They don't even, you know that we've screwed that up a little bit. But one thing I would tell you that, you know, I learned in this, and if there's something I'm disappointed in, it's our visiting side, because I believe that, you know, doing this 37 years, it's, you know, the visiting team's just as important as the home team. They're on the road. You want to treat them right, and we shrunk the visiting side a little bit just out of necessity more than anything, and it was one of the few things we did to try to save a few bucks. But the visiting manager's office is tiny. It doesn't function. You get about 3 people in there, and that's it. But you know, if I'd recommend anybody going forward, you know, you got to look at the visiting team as being nearly as important as the home team. And you know, we have a very nice setup for the visitors. It just isn't what it could have been. And you know, we don't hear anything. It's so much better than what everybody was used to at Cashman. It's you know, it's night and day. So yeah.
David and Tom, I think there's some perspective to maybe add to this.
Well, I think, you know, what I keep thinking about when I'm hearing this is the facility standards that as designers we're obligated. Every one of our contracts with you or your municipalities are going to require us to meet the facility standards, which are dated they were approved, I think, by you all in 90 and put in effect in 91. Well, everybody in this room knows what's happened in that time period. So, you know, we're looking at, you know, new facilities. How do we get these included? I'm looking at my friend Lynn Mosier over here, who then puts prices to what we're trying to put in front of you and says, no, you can't. Here's the budget you guys gave me. We can only do this amount. And it's a constant decision that owners, the architect, the contractor, the municipalities all have to make in their facilities. You know, do we have to design at least to the minimum standards dated 1991. And you all know already likely what's going to happen to those standards in this next 18 months that we're going to be having to put into place at that point. The fortunate thing, though, is most of you, as we're doing your facility, you're anticipating what's happening, or you know what your home club, your franchise is saying to you, and you're responding to that because they know what their players want. We're working with a client now that made no bones about it. Said, look, I want our visitors team clubhouse to be equal to the home team. I've never heard that before. But that's where they want it to be. They want the home club to be equal to the visitors team. So they want to be a part. They want the visitors to come in and say, hey, if it's this good on the visitor side, maybe I want to be on the other side of this thing. So interesting philosophies, but the design standards that are going to have been in place since 91 are changing. You know it. We're eager to see what happens. But as a designer, I think it's going to help us as we do our jobs to help you get newer, better facilities.
Yeah, I think that on the player development side, I think Don set a new standard, and so I'm working on the Wichita project right now, and we went and toured that, and I see that as a sign of things to come. The whole idea about, I don't know how many of your facilities now have video coaching systems, that cameras that they're putting in so that the players can be videotaped every time they swing a bat, throw a ball. That has ramifications going back to fiber and EDF rooms and all those kinds of things that go into your facility, plus video coaching rooms where they can break it down and show it to everybody. So we have all of those that we're doing in Wichita, and then on top of that, I think there's going to be an effort on nutrition. I've been to a lot of other facilities in the last 6 months, and I'm impressed as to how the meal situation, I think it's gotten more than just a bucket of chicken and some French fries for the players, that they're actually, you all are providing some good things for them. I think the strength and conditioning, I think that's changed. It's no longer just lifting weights. There's bands, there's stretching, there's all those other kinds of things. So I see those as coming, but the other thing is that we really aren't talking about is the stadium. Right now, Dave, you mentioned it earlier. It says 4,000, 6,000, 10,000 seats for each level. It says seats. So how do you have the flexibility from an operational standpoint to have to deal with that? And I think that's going to have to change into some kind of formula that gives you a capacity and not fixed seats.
Yeah, because nobody wants to sit anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
No, they don't.
Yeah, good point. I'm going to transition, Tom, and we'll use Wichita to start here.
Okay,
Let's
so
talk a little bit about connecting to the community, and the idea here is that we want to, hear a little bit about how do you make the ballpark, which you know is nestled in the community, how do you connect it to the public way? So whether it's entrances, plazas, kids areas, parks, whatever the buildings, whatever that is, maybe you can use this to talk about.
okay. So this is one of the first renderings that we did for Wichita, and it was when they announced the team moving, it was right over the top of home plate. And Lou Schweckheimer and his crew had a vision for what they wanted to be in Wichita, and that is it's a mixed-use development. And so as you see that they're along the riverfront, which is the Arkansas River, or as they like to say, the Arkansas River, is in the foreground. And then so what we did was we moved the stadium back away from the river so that the development could come into play. And then this is the view back to downtown. Of course, we had to have some wheat on the scoreboard as part of the design. Go ahead. And so part of what drove the entire project was the state of Kansas has what they call star bonds. And so $40 million was available to the team through these star bonds. And so what that does is that enables them to put a certain amount extra on the sales tax for all those facilities. And then in turn, what happened was the city sold Lou and his group 4 acres at $1 an acre. So now what we had to do was we had to try and master plan this. Go ahead, Jim. So we had to master plan this so that we could try to accommodate those 4 acres. If you see on the left, that's the development of the ballpark. And the Lawrence Dumont was actually much closer to the river. So we moved the new stadium back and away from the river. And so if you see these red areas, that's all of the development that Lou and his group are going to be doing. It entitles to the whole issue about the star bonds. And so we have to master plan all these things up front before when we do the ballpark. So this is the entry you're flying over the river. And so this is what they call the river entry. To the left is a building that consists of a museum, which is part of where the star bonds come. It has to be something that's tourist oriented. So people who come to Wichita can go to that anytime they want. So it's a tourism issue. So the museum's on the first floor along the street. Then there's a retail store. Above the museum is the team offices, and then a rooftop party deck. And then this is what you see as you walk through, and the development will be to the right and to the left as you go down the street. Go ahead. And then this was Friday, 1 year after we started design. So that's design and construction that's taken place, and it's approximately 2 weeks ahead of schedule. So when it's all done, and maybe 2 or 3 years later, this is what it's all going to look like for Lou and his team. Go ahead. Oh, you skipped one.
That's not what it's going to look like.
No, I hope not.
Wait a minute.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, go one more. Keep going.
No, there isn't any more.
All right.
I apologize.
You missed it. Okay.
Okay, I apologize.
I'm going to tell Lou it was your fault.
Yeah, you were building up to it. Well, later on, I'll come back, in the second panel.
That's fine.
So, okay, but the idea here is that you're connecting with public funds or available funds. There's certain uses that are necessary for those funds, right? But they-
And full support of the city council and the mayor, and they were all on board with it. And, you all are involved in politics every day because you have facilities that the public come to, and there's always going to be naysayers, but the people in favor outweigh those that were the naysayers.
So, David, you can speak to Annapolis. Will be also a subject in a second panel. But with respect to the design of the stadium and how you're connecting to the community and the development that's proposed around it, can you speak a little bit to that?
Well, Kannapolis is going to be a great model when you open that up this coming March on that and see what's happening. It's exciting to see that, years ago we sought to plant ballparks in the middle of an area that happened to be available, not the best site in the world. You surrounded it with parking and off you went. But, what we're seeing today is a different trend, certainly, with that. So in panel 2 is going to really touch on this. Brian Smith's going to talk about that a lot. But Kannapolis was a prime example, and Mike Legg's going to do an awesome job talking about that. But it's about combining, this is a downtown area that needed change, and to effect the change, the city manager, the mayor, and the council members all went together and created this huge plan. It brought development to the downtown area, it brought revitalization, it did all that. Citing the ballpark with that and combining the two of them, it's going to be a huge success story, and we're going to talk more about that in panel 2.
This shows a little bit more about sort of what's being planned around it.
Yeah, just, where you see the office buildings, the dwelling units there on the right-hand side, right field there, those are non-existent today. Non-existent, right on Main Street. And that's what the development parcel's bringing into play in this. And again, JLL knows all about that as well. But it's been great to work with the city fathers and their vision, supporting that to happen. And it's going to be a great model for one you all are going to celebrate with us, I think, in March.
Yeah, it was said earlier that, it used to be ballparks around Greenfield. Now, we have a lot of them still that way, but we've all seen the migration to create places. It's not the ballpark is where we want to have entertainment, but we want to dwell there. So, we'll start to talk a little bit about, why it's important for stadiums to be a part of the city sort of infrastructure in terms of the city experience and the lifestyle that today's citizens live in their communities. So if you step back in history, David, this may be an interesting, kind of tee up to the next.
Yeah, upper left-hand corner is Jupiter, Florida, back before it was really Jupiter, Florida. It was an idea of a developer, Abacoa Development, decided they wanted to do a golf course community, and oh, by the way, maybe a ballpark. And in the upper left-hand corner is the slate that we had to work with initially. And you take a look at then the lower left, and you see what has evolved, and it's a huge area, probably about 70,000 feet in the air, mind you, but it talks about a 2-team spring training facility that happened in there. And then it was, the ballpark was one of the major components of the downtown. Major components. So you got a people gathering space, it becomes your downtown location for that. Then all of a sudden a community college happened with that. Then a golf course happened with that. Mixed use development started happening. And Jupiter, Florida is now a prime example of what was envisioned. It could happen, 20 years ago, and by golly, there it is today. And we've got a lot of examples. All those other examples are images of the village itself and the ballpark from center field. But again, panel 2 will talk more about that.
Great. Well, guys, thanks so much. Please give a round of applause.
Jim was great. That was great. We're halfway through. Panel 2 and panel 3 will be combined with no break. But panel 1, all about the inside of the facility. 2, we're going to learn about funding. And we're also going to talk about development. And panel 3 talks about how minor league baseball is the most important thing in the history of the world. 10-minute break and then back. Okay? Thanks.